Hello and welcome back to the show. It's Christine Jewell. And today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, specifically unity, unification inside of marriage. And even more specifically, what are some of the things that really disrupt our flow as a couple? What are the things that just get in the way from us experiencing the love, the intimacy, the connection, the unstoppableness that we long for inside of marriages? So, as always, I often talk about this stuff through the lens of relationships, intimate relationships, specifically marriage, but also this is true in a broader scope as well. As you look at how you parent your children, how you develop your teams. Most people want unification. They want to feel like there are one mind, right? They know where they're headed together. They've got shared goals, shared vision. They've got unparalleled support. They know that the people around them have their back. I mean, don't we all want that inside of our marriage? I want to know that my husband is for me, that he has my back, that he will support me, that he will support me in my dreams, my visions, my desires, right? That I don't have to fight for the things that matter to me, at least not with my spouse. But the reality is that so many people are actually in this place where they are fighting with their spouse. They're having to defend, they're having to justify, they're having to over explain or hide, quite frankly, many of the things that they're working on or wanting to work on because they just don't have that level of safety, let alone unification inside of their marriage. So today I want to share 5 things, and I'm going to skim over them pretty quickly, that are really just disrupting the flow inside of your marriage. And I'm going to talk about how you can start to shift the game right away. I'm going to go right out the gate with number 1 is swapping the need for validation for the desire and the intention of edification. What does that mean? Swapping out our incessant need to be validated for being someone who multiplies, who edifies, who builds up other people. You know, we all want to be validated. I mean, it's part of our DNA, right? It's part of our emotional, mental, spiritual DNA to want to feel like you're valued, you're appreciated, you're wanted, you're respected, you're honored, all of that. Those are real needs, okay? And I don't want to dismiss them by any means, because when we are dismissing each other's needs inside of marriage, like, it ends up causing problems. But I'm talking to those of you who want to lead the change inside of your marriages. And so if you want to be the one who's leading the change and you're still going to your marriage and you're going to your spouse and you're constantly looking for their approval, okay? You're looking for them to approve of your decisions, to approve of what you're wearing, to approve of what you said about something or why you think the way you do about a certain matter. You're looking for them to validate your business decisions, your financial decisions, your relational decisions. It's different than getting into agreement. Okay. I want to make sure that I separate the two. Validation is not necessarily coming into agreement, because I can disagree with how you're thinking about something, or I can disagree with my husband's decision around something, or I might have my own opinions around, I don't think that was actually the best thing, but I can also be in agreement with him on how we move forward because I honor him in his position of authority, for example, right? So I can disagree with how he's handling the kids or certain things that he said yes to, right? A lot of times we see this in parenting where one parent is more of the disciplinarian, more of the strict one. The other one's more loosey goosey, is the one that gets talked into saying yes to things, right? They're the pushover. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So a lot of times the friction comes in parenting, how we're handling our kids, money, certain decisions, where one of us is maybe a little bit more controlling, more guarded, right? Lower risk tolerance. We're like the saver or the more structured one. And then there's usually the other one in the relationship, which is more fly by the seat of their pants, more spontaneous, maybe intuitive, more just, going with the flow, a little bit more of a spender, less of a saver, right? Less structure. So again, not to make one right or wrong, it's just to bring awareness to the fact that if I'm constantly expecting or wanting my spouse to validate my ways, my way of thinking, what I believe, how I look, we're constantly setting ourselves up for disappointment. And quite honestly, we're going to the relationship from a very controlling nature and from one of being a taker, not a giver. We're not going with a go giver's attitude, right? So, what does it mean to trade validation, the need, the incessant need, the addiction to validation for the desire for edification? It means just that. It's taking a scan and an inventory of our life, of our relationships, and saying, God, can you just show me right now, where am I going to my marriage and expecting or anticipating or requiring, like demanding constant validation in order for me to be at peace, in order for me to trust, in order for me to feel safe about something, right? In order for me to come into agreement, do I always need this external kind of building up? Create in me a heart, a desire to be the one who edifies, who builds other people up. So again, it's not just about validating other people's feelings and validating other people's emotions, although I do think that's important sometimes, that we create safe environments where people can share how they're feeling without being terrified that they're going to be under attack. But really, what does it mean to edify? It means, let me see them the way you see them. Like, what do they need to hear today? What word of encouragement do they need to hear in this moment? Maybe it's a word of truth, right? Like salt and light that they need. How can I remind them of who they are, even in the moments that they're forgetting? How can I help them see the promises, the vision, the future that is actually brighter than this one challenging moment, right? We're edifying, we're building up, we're establishing the other person instead of trying to squish the other person down so that we can feel better about ourselves. And I just want to say, like, so much of that happens when we have competition inside of our relationship. We don't realize that we are comparing all the time and competing with one another instead of, and we're doing that from an energy and a state of having to take to get more significance, right? To get more approval, to get more validation, rather than saying, you know what, I'm going to be a go giver in this relationship. So that's the first thing. If you guys really want to create greater intimacy, greater connection, more flow, is just to be aware, right? Awareness is the first step of change. Where am I going to get constant approval? How can I start being a distributor of whether it's compliments, and they got to be authentic compliments. Okay. I'm not talking about just saying stuff that's not true. I'm saying, like, when you think something positive about your spouse, when you see them and you're like, man, you look really great today, or I love the way you showed up in that conversation, or I'm proud of you for something. Like, just tell people what you're feeling. Sometimes we have this hesitation. We don't do it because we're guarding, to be quite honest, right? We don't share from our hearts authentically. We withhold love, we withhold words, we withhold compliments, we withhold speaking promises over each other because sometimes we feel like, well, I haven't been getting it, so I'm going to hold it back from the other person. And you guys, that's like robbing your own treasury, right? It's like robbing your own treasury. So that's number one. I might only get to three of them today because I'm a bit of a time crunch. So maybe I'll get to three in the next episode. But the next thing I want to really invite you to consider is trading this offensiveness, the spirit of offensiveness that is easily offended by things, for genuine childlike curiosity. And by the way, these little tips that I'm giving you guys today, they're coming off of a daily message series that I send to my clients. So clients that work with me, they get a daily message, and it's a 10-part series on unification, and every day they kind of get this in their earbuds, right? Every day, one thing to focus on inside of their marriage that they can be shifting. One of the things we recently talked about was being on the lookout where there's a spirit of offensiveness. Something I talk about a lot on this podcast. You've probably heard me say it 100 times if you're a regular listener, that those who are easily offended are easy to manipulate, are easily manipulated, and easily controlled. That means you give your power away. And we just have to be on guard for that. Like, it has a scent, it has a smell, it has a sound, it has a look, offensiveness. And so, again, what happens when we're easily offended is we're looking at everyone around us. We're looking at everyone around us as a mirror. And it's almost like everything that someone is saying or doing or thinking, or many of the things that they're saying or doing or thinking, have something to do with us, right? Oh, they must be thinking about something about me. Or, oh, you must have thought that I did that wrong, or why are you looking at me like that? And again, we can develop a stronghold of offensiveness over years of feeding these stories. Like maybe something happened years ago, but you've just been entertaining this old story. Well, here they are again. They're doing that again. I said something, they don't trust anything I say. I never do anything right. So this is some of the language that I hear when someone has this spirit kind of running through them, is now they've just got a grip on you, right? We want to just bind that right away. We want to have awareness that it's running. So I love the prayer of Holy Spirit, just reveal to me, where is there a spirit of offense where I'm easily offended, easily taking things personally? Again, that's a deep root of pride. It's all about me, right? Just show it. And can I exchange that right at the altar? We're an altar. Our life is an altar. Our heart is an altar. We can exchange it. You can say, Lord, I want to exchange that for a spirit of curiosity and childlike wonder. Give me a heart of curiosity, a heart of childlike wonder. And I love this childlike wonder because it has us really get curious of like, well, what else is going on? What else am I not seeing? Of course, it's not about me. It must be something else. And we really genuinely are asking questions because we want to know, not because we're trying to figure out and analyze, well, what did they mean about that? And how is it related to what they think about me? A little example of this, I forget the exact context, but it's so easy when you could be giving somebody a compliment. And I'm sure many of you have had this where you're going to legitimately give someone a compliment, or someone maybe has given you a compliment in the past or said something like, hey, you always come through, and you're like, oh, what's that supposed to mean? Right? Automatically it's like, I don't believe it. You twist it. And of course, yes, people use passive aggressiveness and they use sarcasm to get at each other. So number one, pluck that stuff out of your life. I do not agree with sarcasm. I do not like passive aggressiveness, because it's not direct communication. It's indirect, confusing, clouded communication that has interference in it. I'm a big believer that God is a God of clarity, not confusion, that we're called to speak in clear terms with one another as much as possible inside of our relationships, that we are to clearly ask for what we need, clearly communicate what we're feeling. And yet, so many of us have adopted these twisted ways of trying to get our points across, like using sarcasm, such as using passive aggressiveness, that always generate more problems. They're just like seeds that sow more division, they're seeds that sow more confusion. It sounds cute in the moment, but again, it comes back to that root of pride of like, haha, I'm going to get one over you. I'm going to get that little dig in, and I'm going to get to this in a minute. But trading a spirit of offense for genuinely being curious. So asking questions when you notice yourself starting to get a little offended and triggered. Again, like, what else is going on here? How are you doing? Right? Instead of going, what's up with you? Just saying, how are you doing? Right? What's going on? What else is going on? It's not about the content of what they just said, it's about the context, right? And it requires us to really remove ourselves a bit. I heard somebody say this the other day and I thought it was so good. Can we be quiet? Can we just shut up long enough for the Holy Spirit to recalibrate our nervous system a little bit and retrain us on how to think in that moment? Maybe retrain us on a better response, a better question to ask. And so I just love that, as I have worked on this a lot in my life because, y'all, I'm just going to say this. I used to get offended very easily. I'm feisty. I'm a warrior. I like to fight for things. I like to stand up for things. I like to be bold and courageous and go after things that I desire. And so that warrior spirit can get really twisted up sometimes when it's easily offended. And this is what I mean by it's easily manipulated. Now, your energy, your attention, your focus, your life force is getting like usurped, right? Up. It's getting used up to fight a battle that was never yours to fight, and B, it was the wrong battle. You're fighting over something that's completely irrelevant. That's not even the real thing. So now not only are you hijacked and baited, you're just totally distracted, you're disoriented, and before you know it, you're tired because you've been putting all of your energy and your fight into something that is actually getting you nowhere, right? It's totally, you're off way on the wrong track. And so it never resolves the core issue, but you're exhausted from talking about it and fighting about it and going around in circles around it. So be on the lookout for this offensive spirit. You know, it's, I'm going to pull up that verse. I don't know it off the top of my mind, but I'm going to come back to this that is so good for this. Um, hold on one second because I want to pull this up. Um, pause with me for a moment. Okay. I am going to pause with me for a moment. Okay. So 1 Peter 5:8 says, be sober, meaning well balanced and disciplined, right? Self-disciplined. Be alert and cautious at all times. That enemy of yours, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, fiercely hungry, seeking someone to devour, right? Seeking someone to devour. Devour. The enemy is actively lurking, y'all. He's not passive. And actively looking is looking for someone, looking for a weak link, looking for a weak spot. Maybe that's fear. Maybe that's bitterness. Maybe that's offensiveness. And that way it can be exploited. So this is why we're called to be alert, right? We're called to be spiritually discerning. And that's the ability to recognize, oh, this is just bait right now. It's not about this person. There's something else here trying to bait me. So just be alert, be on the lookout. The other thing I wanted to say here is as we adopt childlike curiosity and wonder, we also start to be a lot more playful, right? We laugh more. We start to notice that we laugh more. Oftentimes our marriages, we get so serious, we get so structured, we get so just focused on the day-to-day stuff we have to do. And again, think about this with your kids, think about this with your teams, not just inside of your marriages, but it's so easy to become so just serious and weighed down. And when you're weighed down and you're tired and you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, it's easy to get offended because your capacity is super low. So as we start coming back to curiosity, we start adopting a childlike exploration. We start becoming more playful. We're infusing play. We're infusing lightness back into the atmosphere, back into the conversation. We can laugh at ourselves. When was the last time you laughed at yourself inside of your relationships? You laughed at yourself at work. You laughed as a team. You laughed as a family. We are way too serious. We need to play more. Last weekend, I went camping with the kids, two of our kids, we have six. And we were out there and I was at the waterfall. We were chasing waterfalls and I was, singing and dancing as we were walking through the woods. I was worshiping, I was praying. I had like the joy flowing through me. It was like a rivers of living water. It reminds me of that song, Living Water Deep Within Me. Anyways, I had this just joy that was flowing out of me and I was dancing and I was singing and we were at the waterfalls and I was like taking my time and and I was laughing, and the kids were like, "Mom, you could be such a kid sometimes. You're such a little girl sometimes." And I took that as such a compliment. I was like, "Why, thank you. I received that because I want to be childlike in nature, in terms of in my spirit. I'm very wise in terms of I have this like old wise woman persona, and then I have this warrior that's fierce, and I have this childlike spirit that's playful." And it was light. We had so much fun together. It makes me think of how many people, again, we go on family trips or we do things and it's like we're always rushing somewhere. We have such a tight agenda. We're offended when people take too long. It has to do something with us. They're disrespecting us. Instead of like, whoa, let's just stop and see like what's here, right? We're exploring together. Okay. I'm sharing this because as we think about what makes a fun, great, unified marriage, we are in a state of exploration. We are in a state of curiosity. We are in a state of being on the same team instead of being pitted against each other, which is what that offensive spirit wants to do. It wants to pit us against each other. So all of a sudden we are adversaries instead of unified team moving in the same direction. The last one I'm going to do 3 today. So I know I said I was going to do 5, so I apologize, but we're going to do 3 and then We'll give you three more next time. I'll give you a bonus one in the next episode. But the last one I want to adjust today, and I've talked about it a lot the last few times, is really exchanging this spirit of control, the controlling nature. And I'm talking to those of you who really, really maybe suffer with anxiety. You have a lot of anxiousness, maybe fearful thoughts around the future. What's going to happen? What if we get it wrong? You just need everything to be perfect. Some of you might call yourself perfectionists. You like to be on top of things. You like to have a pulse on everything. And I do believe that we're called to be stewards. So we need to be wise with the resources that we've been given. You know, we're called to have our eyes on our numbers and our finances and know what's going on and to have order. I'm not talking about chaos and disorder. I'm talking about excessive controlling personalities. Okay, where again, I need to control everything in order to feel safe. I need to know every detail in order for me to be calm. So there's an underlying current that's always there of just anxiety. And when we're anxious, again, we have a lot of survival mentality going on. We're in a very primal state. Our our pupils are narrowed, our thinking is narrowed, we're hypersensitive to things in our environment, because we have such a high need to know in order to have security. Security is founded on the external things again. And so as we think about how do I exchange, Lord, again at the altar, show me, Holy Spirit, reveal to me where I have maybe controlling tendencies, where I'm trying to be the God of my own life, or maybe the God over this person, my husband, my wife. I'm even controlling the way, like they should work out a certain way. And this kind of ties to the first thing that I said about validation versus edification, but this is more around like really that anxiety that we live in. Can I exchange that for pliability, for openness, flexibility, whatever that word is for you? But we must be able to bend like a palm tree, right? Not break, but there will be storms. There will be pressures of life. I mean, if you are listening to this podcast and you're human, there are financial pressures at times. There's parental pressures. There's environmental and economic pressures. We are in a world, um, it makes me think of Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for your rod and your staff, they comfort and guide me, which says that. And when walking through some dark times, dark places, it makes me think of certain areas of town where you drive through and you just feel the weight of oppression sometimes in the atmosphere. We are in these environments all the time. We're coming in and out of them. Do we freak out when things are not perfect, when things are not exactly how we want them to be? We have to be people that are pliable, that can bend and move. Not that we're unwavering in our character and in our spirit, but that we don't need to be controlling and legalistic on the outside. One of the things that suffocates marriages and the lifeblood of businesses and teams and families is one person being so domineering and dominant that there's no room, there's no oxygen for anyone else to have a different idea, different thoughts, different perspective, different solutions. And so what it does is it starts to shut down other people's initiative, other people's taking ownership over things. And so then you hear things like, well, no one does anything around here. I'm always the one that has to come up with the solutions. I'm always the one that has to fix everything. I'm always the one that has to figure it out. May I suggest, is it possible you have created that environment around you, right? And so we have to be careful of this again, that we just have to be careful of this, right? We don't want to be walking and led by a controlling spirit that is masquerade as wisdom, when it's really just fear. Okay. Fear often masquerades as wisdom. So we need to be discerning and recognize that. And instead, we say, Lord, make me pliable. I love that. I was talking to a client earlier this morning that is now about to get married. It's his second marriage. And he realizes that pride and shame and anger and so many unresolved emotions, and that he had not processed from his past, had really ruled him in the last decade in his previous marriage. And as he's looking ahead and we're setting him up for success in his second marriage and getting the foundations right, the number one focus right now is that he would be pliable to the molding of the Holy Spirit, that his character would be pliable, that he would allow the Holy Spirit to just burn and refine the parts that need to be burned off, the old programs, the old thinking, the old controlling tendencies, and that he would be open and receptive, right? Pliable to new ideas, new ways of thinking, a new heart, a new mind, right? A new future. That he wasn't going to have to be the source of creating everything himself. So I need to wrap there because I got to hop, but I wanted to share these things today with you guys I have such a heart for unification because I know how powerful it is when you are living in the space of really being unified as a couple. I just think it's such a beautiful place. And when we're unified with Christ and we have the Holy Spirit with us, in us, and we are really walking in right relationship, and then we are unified as a couple, I say it all the time, you guys, it is like rocket fuel to every area of your life. It just brings a peace that doesn't make sense. It opens doors you didn't even know were there before. It creates paths in the wilderness, right? Rivers in the desert. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, something we all want. And yet so many of us are still entertaining these old habits, being ruled by these old spirits, right? And pathways and doors. And it's time for us to create awareness around what are the things that have been blocking, literally have been blocking our ability to get in sync. Let's remove the blocks. Let's remove the friction so that love can flow again, desire can flow again, shared ideas, dreams, the flow of life can flow again in our marriage. Too many marriages I see today, the life has exited the building. And I believe that it's just like we have so many dams up. There's so many rocks that are preventing love and joy and desire and right relationship to flow. It's like it's a dry riverbed. So as we start to open up the dams, the water starts flooding in again. And it's rivers of life. They come back, right? We make all things new again. All right, guys, I hope that today's episode was helpful for some of you. I hope that it spoke into some of you. And if it did, please subscribe, share. If you're not subscribed to the podcast or to this channel, subscribe to the channel, comment. This is literally how these things they grow, the messages spread. If you find these conversations useful, let me hear from you. And I just want to put a plug here again that we are running a 30-day breakthrough. I am now releasing a 30-day breakthrough experience. It's a one-on-one, very immersive coaching experience specifically for those of you who are ready to break that dam right now. If you have been living in a dry bed, right? There's an area of your life that you have been recycling and just spinning your wheels in, and it has just felt like there is a block to the flow in your life. It is time for breakthrough. This coaching experience is for you. It is for those who like to go deep and wide, who are not afraid to roll up their sleeves, do the work. It's daily touch points with me. It's one-on-one, daily action items, and we address it holistically. That means we look at the spiritual roots of the issue. Then we get your head, your heart, and your actions into alignment so that dam breaks. If you want to learn more, click on the link called the Breakthrough Experience. You can apply to see if it's the right fit. We'll send you details. I only take 2 people a month in this because of the nature of the work. But if you can't get in right away, we can put you on the wait list. So, Breakthrough Experience, if you want to hear more about that, click on the link. And until next time, you guys, here's to loving fiercely, leading courageously. Bye for now.